Thank you for joining today. We're going to start. This is a relatively short webcast compared to others. This is only going to be an hour long, so we want to get going on time. This is the Building and Excellence in Stormwater Management, an introduction and a launch of the National MS4 Online Resource. This is being hosted by the National Municipal Stormwater Alliance, otherwise known as NAMSA, and US EPA has been heavily involved with this, and we'll have representation here. I also want to note that this is being funded in part by the Chesapeake Bay Trust as well. My name is Seth Brown, and I am the Executive Director of the National Municipal Stormwater Alliance, and I'll be facilitating the discussion today, but we'll have several speakers. The overview today is we'll do a quick introduction about what will be covered. We'll provide a brief overview of NAMSA, so you have an understanding of the context of this organization and who's hosting this new tool and this new resource. Then we'll provide some overview of the resource itself, as well as some context, so you have an understanding of where it's coming from, how it was developed, and how it works. And we'll apply that knowledge through a tour of the resource with some examples. And lastly, we'll have a conclusion and then a Q&A session as well. The speakers today will include Dave Smith, who is an Assistant Director with the Water Division with the EPA Region 9. I've already introduced myself, Seth Brown, Executive Director of NAMSA, and also Principal and Founder of Storm and Stream Solutions. Randy Neprash will be also online talking about the tool and the resource. He is the Vice Chair with NAMSA. He also heads up the Minnesota City Stormwater Coalition and is also affiliated with Stantec. And Wes Ganter is also going to talk. He is the CEO and founder of PG Environmental, which is a sister company to ERG. Before we get going, I did want to go over some quick housekeeping information. First of all, this is being recorded, and we will post this to the NAMSA website, and you'll see that information about how to get to the website at the end of this webcast. There will be PDHs, 1.0 PDHs associated with this, since this is an hour long. Regarding questions, I mentioned that there's going to be a question and answer session. We suggest that you ask questions through the question function. So instead of, or raise your hand, but it's really a lot better if you can ask your questions through the question function. We'll compile those as we go along, and at the end, we'll have about 15 minutes at least, 10 to 15 minutes to address questions. So please, we'd love to have as many questions as possible on this, but please do it through the question function. Also, if there are any issues regarding audio or any other kind of issues related to audio or video, let us know. I'm getting some questions and through the question function right now, saying that there's some problems. I've only heard that from one person, I believe, so far. So maybe it's just a local issue. If something continues, please continue to let us know. If you can use the chat function, that'd be preferred, but you can use either one to do that if you want. And I think that's that. We do want to also ask a quick poll question before we get going. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we want to know where you're coming from. So we just launched a poll. Hopefully this should show up for you. We want to know what your professional background or affiliation is. We want to know, especially because NAMSA really focuses on the MS4 sector and stormwater program managers. We want to know how many program managers from the public sector there. Are there other public sector folks, regulators, for instance, that are involved, folks representing nonprofits or researchers, academicians, or private consultants involved. So we'll give it a little bit of time. Okay, it looks like we've got a lot of public sector folks, which is really great. Which is what we'd like to see. Give it another few seconds here. Okay. Looks like about 80% of you have voted, and let's see here. All right. It looks like we've got the majority of folks are from the public sector, which is great. So thank you for taking your time out of your schedule to go learn about this new resource. We greatly appreciate it. It's very helpful to know who's on board with us today. So I'm going to move forward now and give a little bit of background on NAMSA. NAMSA is a national coalition that focuses solely on the MS4s across the country. So our members are not individuals, our members are organizations. So first thing we want to make sure that we're clear about is the fact that this is an organization of organizations. There are other great organizations that focus on the stormwater sector for individual practitioners and researchers and whatnot. This is an organization of organizations, and we'll talk about which organizations are part of NAMSA right now. So we have two types of members. Primarily, we've got state and regional coalition groups, and we also have affiliate members. Normally, well, our bylaws actually state that state or regional members should represent 5 or more MS4s in a state or in a region. There are some states that are governed such that there are coalitions rather than statewide organizations. So we have both types in our organization on the state and regional member side. But we're trying to really get a membership from each state across the whole country, and be great to have these coalitions work together within the state to represent the state as a whole. That's kind of one of our overall goals. And on the affiliate member side, we're talking about anybody's involved who's not one of those state groups, organizations that are consultants, technologists, law firms, manufacturers, anyone who's focused on the MS4 sector and has an interest in that area. NAMSA's vision is very, very clear, very simple. We want to provide clean water for the nation. Making that happen, of course, is a bit of a nuance, and that's harder to do. But we want to do that specifically through meeting this vision of providing efficient and effective MS4 programs and basing decisions on science and information as much as possible. We feel like there's a real need to have the MS4s at the table as the MS4 sector and stormwater writ large matures as an industry. And we just want to be the ones to help at that national level, be part of that dialogue. So that's the vision of NAMSA. Those are our goals. Our groups, currently you can see in this map that we have 19 state groups at this point. Some of them are statewide, some of them are regional groups within the state. But you can see we've got good representation across the country. We've got we've got 9 of the 10 EPA regions represented as well, so they're not all clumped together in one place. We are also discussing membership with several other states that are not in blue here. So we hope to have, hopefully close to half the country covered within the next year or two. We also have 7 affiliate members at this time. We were established in 2018, so that's when we've got our 501c3 IRS approval. So we are relatively new compared to many others in the in this national nonprofit industry group world. And you can see information here about our leadership. We have Scott Taylor, who is associated with the California Stormwater Quality Association. He is our chair. He is also involved with other groups such as TRB and others. He's a real leader in the stormwater sector. Randy Neprash, who will be speaking today, as the vice chair. He's again heads up the Minnesota City Stormwater Coalition. And we also have Jennifer Watson, who is the treasurer, and she represents the Tennessee Stormwater Association. And I'm the executive director. I'm located in the Washington, D.C. area. So without further ado, I think we'll move on to the next section and really talk about the resource. So I'm going to hand this over to Dave Smith. Dave, I'm going to unmute you here, and I'll mute myself. And if you want to provide some input, that'd be great.
Thank you, Seth. Again, my name is Dave Smith, and I'm with the Environmental Protection Agency's Pacific Southwest region, headquartered in San Francisco. It's my pleasure to represent EPA on this call and tell you a little bit about why we invested in the partnership that created this online resource. I'm really excited that we're at this point of launching this, and we hope that this is something that will help many folks in the stormwater community. We did provide some funding to help put some contracting resources in place to help us develop these tools. I really want to acknowledge first the leadership and the partnership with those who kind of pulled this off. First, the folks from NAMSA who worked so closely with us to develop this and spent numerous hours doing so. Wes Ganter and his team from PG Environmental that did a lot of the nitty-gritty work on it. And there were a host of other experts in stormwater from around the country who helped, but I really want to highlight the vision and leadership of Dominique Lukenhoff, who used to be with EPA in Region 3 and has since moved on and is working with Hugo New. But we kind of hatched this together in partnership with NAMSA. We hope that this is a resource that provides you a lot of really good information on MS4 programs and on strategies to build better MS4 programs. Our observation is that there's a huge amount of accumulated insight and experience in the stormwater community, but so far, not a lot of places to go to sort of get that information from single sources. And our hope is that this resource provides a gathering forum so that we can share some of the great insights and experience that this community has developed in building and improving our stormwater programs around the country. Why did EPA invest in this? My first answer is permits don't implement themselves. We are certainly interested in promoting activities to address stormwater related pollution and improve urban water management. But it's clear to us that in the stormwater community, there are huge challenges to implementation, not enough funding, not enough organizational support in many communities. And so it's a sector that really needs help and can accomplish an enormous amount. We're also seeing huge developments and innovation in trying to pursue stormwater management methods that are innovative and help us realize multiple benefits beyond water quality protection. So we're hoping that by helping to invest in this, it will help you build your capability in operating these programs and help folks who work with communities better understand some of the strategies and methods that are available to help be successful with urban stormwater management and help pursue all of the other reasons why integrated urban water management is an important thing to pursue. Want to be clear, we're not setting any new regulatory or permitting requirements here. This isn't intended to be a regulatory tool at all, but hopefully it'll help people think about how to do smart permitting in ways that help municipal stormwater programs advance their multiple goals and objectives. And finally, I'll say this is the first shot at this, and I know that NAMSA and EPA are committed to the notion that we can build more. We can improve these tools. We can add more modules if necessary to address areas that are of concern and use to you. So with that, I just want to thank everybody for their hard work on this. We really look forward to your feedback and your use of this. And I'll turn it back over to you, Seth. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. We also, before moving on, I definitely wanted to make sure that EPA understands our appreciation. NAMSA really appreciates all the resources and funding that went into this tool and this resource, and it's something that we want to definitely expand. So that last point there about feedback and improvement, enhancement, and expansion, we can't stress that enough. that we definitely want that to be a focus here. And we hope that we're going to provide some information now on what the actual resource is, so you get some context that way. We really invite you to go explore and provide that feedback. So this is not just us saying it. This is something we really believe in. So Wes, I believe you are tagged up to hit the next couple of points for us. I'll mute myself. It sounds like looks like you're ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Seth. Yeah, this is Wes Ganter from PG Environmental. We were really excited to work with both NAMSA and EPA on the product. PG sourced a lot of the resources and then built out the content of the resource pages. We also helped to craft some of the language that's in the guide itself, and we'll talk about briefly. ERG was able to build the web interface and put it in that then NMSA can maintain moving forward. So the online resource starts with a landing page, and that landing page is a brief introduction of, as similar to what Dave just expressed. There's also some more information in there that is some keys to some long-term success that the authors think is important for program development and maturation. This guide started with the 6 content areas that are seen there. It's envisioned, as Dave and Seth have both said, that those can grow and additional content can be provided. I would say that those 6 content areas that are there currently, they're not reflective. They're not the 6 MCMs. Rather, they are challenges within the MS4 program that I think the authors and EPA really wanted to try to address. MS4 101 was added really at the last minute as just a means to capture resources that could be helpful across the various minimum control measures. And so that is really intended to just be a rather simplistic access point into resources that can be utilized by viewers. In building the content, there was a real challenge, and this is where feedback is needed. The challenge is trying to balance the content that's in these categories with ease of use and on the web. And so we had multiple iterations of trying to find a sweet spot where information can be presented, it's readily digestible, it's the valuable component of the topic without dragging on and on upon pages. So I think that is an area for feedback for everyone to look at is did we hit the right mark with the depth of content? And then, of course, the other is really trying to find, are we really extracting the really valuable information from a resource? But I think those are 2 things to really look at when you dive deep into the resource itself. Do we capture the information, and is it presented in a way that's useful to you? Seth, I think you can go on to the next slide.
Yeah, before we do that, I got a couple of comments that have come in, Wes, and I think this is true, so that everyone, if everyone online can hear this, we are going to be showing a lot of information, a lot of screen captures. The reason we did that rather than going to actually manipulating the website itself is it's just you get delays and it's clunky that way. So we did some screen captures. Sometimes those don't come out as clearly on different resolutions for screens. So it was asked, Wes, if you could talk about the 6 different, actually say what those 6 different categories are, and then in the future we should all, as we present information, speak to some of the details on the slides, so they may not be clear with some. So can you talk a little bit about that at least right now, and then I'll go to the next one after that.
Yeah, and you're going to go through a tour later and dig down into some of these, but the 6 categories are kind of an MS4 101, which is really some of the base material that is out there and available that we're trying to aggregate and make available to folks in a searchable resource library. The other 5 categories actually have content that's been developed and within each, and those are communication and outreach, funding, operations, program goals and management, and water quality outcomes. So you'll note right away, those aren't necessarily in alignment with the phase 2 program, MCMs, rather they're topics, and within those we've broken out specific components, and you'll find in the funding category, for example, there are a lot of sub-elements in there that talk about designing and acquiring, managing your funds. In operations, for example, right now there's really just 2 subcategories in there for asset management and green infrastructure. Again, the goal here is to solicit input from users to be able to build more overall categories in the subcategories within.
Thanks, Wes. And I'll go to the next screen then. Are you ready for the next slide?
Yes.
Okay. And I also wanted to note to everybody that we'll have a PDF available, and that we'll post this as well and can send them out to everybody else on the call or on the webcast. Go ahead. Sorry, Wes.
That's all right. So this is also the content, both in what topics to discuss and the content itself. Was a group exercise with a variety of stakeholders. Those are from programs themselves, they're from regulators, they're from consultants, and we tried to get as much feedback from that group as possible. And they were involved in, again, selecting topics and reviewing and refining the draft content. So I won't read every one, but they're there, and we really appreciated the support of everybody's assistance. And you can flip to the next slide, Seth. And this is just a bit of a formality, but as you move on, this is on the bottom of the homepage of the website itself. Just reminding everybody that for content, and this works through the feedback mechanisms that are in the website, that content is to be directed to Seth. His email is right there for you. NMSA has asked that if you cite content from the MS4 National MS4 Online Resource, that you use the citation, and the citation is provided on this page. And the last thing that's on there is just, and Dave already acknowledged this, but from US EPA, that this is not intended to establish any new regulatory requirements. The content contained within is not intended to reflect EPA's views or an endorsement of EPA. The content was developed exclusively through the stakeholder group that crafted the content, identified resources, and put those together. And again, they do not reflect the views or an endorsement of US EPA.
Okay, thanks, Wes. Appreciate it. I'm going to take the next few slides. I'm going to mute you. There you go. Thanks for doing that, Wes. As has been mentioned, we have not only is this version 1.0, NAMSA has envisioned, through obviously close coordination with EPA, that this would be a dynamic tool. And to make something dynamic, we need to be able to provide a portal or a pathway for input. So there are a couple different ways to provide input. First, the first thing I'll just say is that there's a way to access resources, and I'll go through each one of these. But there's a way, so if you just want to bypass all of this and just go right into the resource, see what resources are available rather than going in category by category, you can do that. And we'll show you what that looks like. But we also have a way to provide a feedback, any kind of content, user experience, whatever it is for feedback, we've got a way to do that. And lastly, if you want to submit a resource, if you've got a new report or whatever it is, you can submit that to us, and we'll go through how that works here. So to go to the resource page, again, there's a button that goes directly to that page from the landing page. And you can see that the first thing you can do is you can filter by categories, and those categories are the 6 categories that Wes talked about on the landing page. So if you just want to go down to communications and outreach and only look at what resources are available there, that's one way to do it. You can also use the search function and search terms on that. And then once you do that, just like any other search function, you'll see what information comes up. So the search filter results show up, and it provides the context, the category, it provides the author, the date, so you can see, is this a new or an old resource, the link, and then some context about what the resource is really about. So that way you have, you might say, oh, that title looks really interesting, But once I kind of dug down into it, you know, if you see what actually the context is, maybe that's not exactly what we're looking for. So we wanted to provide that kind of information to make it as user friendly and functional as possible for folks. So that's one way to engage with the resource. Again, since this is the launch, we did kind of a soft launch about a month and a half ago, something like that, and we asked a subset of folks to go through the resource, tell us if there's any misspellings and typos and things like that. So we've tried to address that as much as we can. There's always, you know, problems. These things are dynamic. As far as, you know, links, we have a way to keep our links all as live as possible. So we will try to stay on top of that. That's a pet peeve of mine, is going somewhere and finding that the links are dead. So we're going to try to stay on top of that. But if you find any problems with the user experience, or if you feel like, hey, you should have some more information in these different categories, go there. You can select a category. You can select multiple categories if your comment is based upon that. So this is more general feedback. And we're looking for as much input as possible. Doesn't mean that we can respond to everything, especially, you know, right away. It depends on resources and time, of course, but at least having that feedback will be something that will be. We want to, as Dave said, we want to be make this as useful as possible to the sector. And lastly, on submitting a resource, again, to keep this growing, kind of generate this library, as Dave mentioned, having a library of information is very helpful. We need you to provide, obviously, your basic information as well as the resource information, and then we need to have a category, at least one category, because that's part of the search function, as I showed you before. I wanted to stress here that, you know, the information you see that's listed here, the title, obviously the author, the web link, we are not intending, at this point, we might change in the future, but at this point, we're trying to just provide a pathway to other resources instead of hosting the resources on our site. Again, that might change if we feel like there's a lot of feedback, for instance, that says, hey, it'd be great if we could actually host something on your site. We'll have to look at that. But right now, we just want to be that pathway to others that have their resources on another site. So that's what we're looking at now. But I also want to stress when you provide a description, we really want to understand not just what the resource is, but why it's important and why it's relevant. And so we've provided, you know, 500 words is a fair amount of space that should provide enough for you to be able to express what it's about and why it's important. So I can't stress that enough, that because as you can see, the note at the bottom there, we're going to curate this. We're going to review this. So if there are resources that come in that we feel like is too commercial, then we may not accept it. So we reserve that right to do that. We can provide some commercialization potentially, but as long as the spirit of the resource is on not just selling a product or a service, but is actually intended to be useful and helpful to the sector, then we will share that. But it's something that we're going to be doing as part of hosting this and expanding this in the future. How we change these policies, we'll communicate that to everybody as well. So I just want to emphasize to folks that we are really looking at trying to provide the best context available in that. So with that, I'm going to move on to an overview here that Randy will provide. And so Randy, I'm gonna unmute you if I can. And Randy, are you there?
I am indeed. Thanks,
All
Seth.
right. So yeah, if you can go through things and walk us through everything and show some examples, that'd be great.
Thanks. So I'm Randy Nieprash. I'm based in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. I'm the vice chair, as Seth has said earlier. I'm the current vice chair of NAMSA. I'm also the staff for the Minnesota Cities Stormwater Coalition, and I work as an engineer for Stantec Consulting. What we wanted to do at this point in the presentation was try to give you a brief perspective on the detail and breadth of this resource. So we're going to try to do that in a couple ways. It's worth taking a look at that graphic in the lower right-hand corner of this slide. It's important to know that this resource is definitely not your typical stormwater design manual. The focus here is on MS4 programs, how to set them up well, how to improve them, how to get them to be more effective and more efficient, but it's a real programmatic focus rather than stormwater design. So as was mentioned earlier, there are these 6 broad topic areas. MS4 101, communication and outreach, funding, operation, program goals and management, and water quality outcomes. Seth, the next slide, please. One way we thought to convey the breadth and detail was just to give you an outline of what's in each one of these sections. Please know, be relieved that I'm not going to read through all this stuff. So please read through it carefully as it comes up, but we'll also be distributing this slideshow as a PDF file, so you'll be able to come back and look at it that way. We've organized these, some of these topics have a lot of material, so they're not going to show up in order, but they'll show up as they fit well onto the slides. So the MS4 101 section is, not surprisingly, divided into the minimum control measures. And this area, this category has virtually all resource links, but each of the resources, and there's more than 100 of them in the entire resource, each one of these links and descriptions is sorted by minimum control measures. So it's a good way to find a lot of stuff. Communication and outreach gets into more content material, and the main topic area here is conducting watershed outreach campaigns. So this is really public education, communication and outreach to your citizens, and you can see the subtopics that are listed under this area. Next slide, please, Seth.
Oh, sounds good, Randy. I will. I wanted to note here, if we could, do you want to talk about the different subtopics? There are some that have some that have one or you know, there's a variation there. Do you want to talk about that? And I'll go to the next slide as you're doing that.
Well, there's varying content under the major topic areas, but then also each subtopic area. Some of them are long and extensive. Some of them are relatively short. It's important to note how things made their way into this resource. So in some cases, it's what was felt to be important and useful. In other cases, we have more or less material depending on how much content and how many resources were available that we could find or knew about online for a particular topic. And then, like every project, we had the limits to time, money, and energy that could go into this. It's going to expand over time, but it is what it is at this point. So the next major topic area is operations. You can see the topics under that. The 2 big ones right now are asset management and then green infrastructure. And each of those have 7 or 8 subtopics. A lot of material on how to set up an asset management plan or improve what you have already. And then, not surprisingly, there's a good bit of material on green infrastructure as well. Next slide, please. Another major topic area is the water quality outcomes. And the 2 topics under that are stormwater monitoring, the details of setting up monitoring programs, variations in evolution, also watershed-based modeling, which has an important function within a good MS4 program. Every one of these topic areas has a resource link or a set of resources linked at the bottom of each page. And we'll see that more clearly in a few minutes. Next slide, please, Seth. When it comes to program goals and management, you can see now we've got more material available under this topic. We've got 3 major areas: long-term planning, developing a stormwater management program, and establishing program vision and goals. And then each one of those has 5 to 8 detailed subcategories under each one of those topics. So a lot of material again on program goals and management. Next slide, Seth. And there is, not surprisingly, a ton of material on funding. We all know that this is a huge component of running a successful and effective local program. This actually is going to take 2 slides to go through the topics and subtopics. Establishing a comprehensive stormwater program plan, revenue, funding, and financing sources and strategies, funding source options. There's just a lot of detail and a lot of good ideas and sources that you may or may not have thought of already under these topics. And then it continues on to the next slide, where now we've got 4 additional topic areas: determining program costs, administering, developing a dedicated revenue source, integrating stormwater with other public programs and projects, and economic opportunities in working with the private sector and property owners. Again, under each of these topics, there's multiple subtopics and a pretty extensive resource list at the end of each one of these. So that gives you a flavor of the outline of all these materials and how the different topic areas and subtopics are structured. Next slide, please, Seth. We thought it would be useful to essentially walk through a couple topics real briefly and show you how they work. So one topic area was determining your local program costs, which not surprisingly is under funding. Next slide, please. And when you open the funding topic area, what you see are the topic areas under that category. And the middle one here is program costs. And so clicking on that takes you to the next page and the next slide. So this is what determining program costs page looks like. For each of these subtopics, you get a nice list of all the subtopics that are essentially the contents of this page in this blue right-hand box that shows up at the top of each page. Each one of those is a clickable link, and so it will move you down to that subtopic on the topic page. PG Environmental's done a really nice job of providing a variety of navigation strategies and links. So every time you move down, you also will have the option to go right back to the top of each page. So in this case, you can look for some information about program costs. And next slide, please, Seth. So one of the things that shows up throughout the resource are case studies, which usually appear in these dark blue boxes and in areas that are specifically related to detailed subtopics. So in this case, Here we have links to some successful expense tracking tools. One from the University of Maryland Environmental Finance Center and another from the Environmental Finance Center at Sacramento State University. I've gone exploring through these, and both of those links were just remarkable and fascinating and new material to me. So there's a good chance that this is going to be new material to some of you as well. But these case studies show up throughout the resource. Next slide, please, Seth. One of the really important tools here is as you're looking at either creating a new program area or improving a program component that you already have in place, is are you thinking about all the different things that you should be thinking about that are important for that program component? And this is an example of common stormwater program costs in capital, O&M, and program administration. And you can use lists like these to make sure that you're thinking about all the areas that you should be thinking about and picking up all the pieces that will be important if you're going to have an effective and efficient local program. Next slide, please. So then, another aspect of program costs is anticipating future program costs. And here again, there's another case study, in this case, Pullman, Washington, and a link that takes you to a really nice report and financial plan that these folks put together. This slide, the lower half of this slide, also shows you what the resource page looks like. And again, this is the resources for just this specific subtopic page. You only see one. In this case, it looks like there's 6 or 8 different entries under this particular subtopic. And again, you can scroll through and link to all this material easily. Next page, please, Seth. Another topic that we thought about exploring was asset management, which is included under the operations category. Essentially, again, the same structure to the topic page. You get the light blue box with all the contents listed. Next slide, please, Seth. So here, again, another nice list for understanding the process for implementing an asset management plan. This is a way to think through all the steps and try to make sure that you're not missing anything important. Next slide, please. And then again, finally, the resource links at the bottom of this subtopic page. Here we've got 14 different entries under asset management. This is a relatively new area for lots of programs, but there's a good bit of information, case studies and examples that are out there, and we've provided the ones that we think are most useful that will be helpful for you folks. Next slide, please. And with that, I'm done with our little tour. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Seth. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Okay, so you guys have now seen some basics about this resource and the areas that it covers. Hopefully you've gained some knowledge in that area. Again, I totally understand that it may be challenging to see the details of some of these screen captures, and there's a lot of information shared there. So because the resource is now fully launched, we ask you to go, again, provide that feedback. We've got the link is on the next slide. Or if you have any questions, let us know about that. So again, we definitely need that feedback. And again, we primarily want to, concerned about technical content, but we also want to hear about user experience. I want to set some expectations here so that we are reasonable. How much we can change and how often we can update is, it depends on resources. It depends on how much feedback we get. If we get a lot of great feedback, then it'll take some more time. But we definitely will be making updates and expansions as we can. As Dave mentioned early on, we want to make sure that what we're providing is something that is useful to the sector. And I know that for me, just like many of you, I'm sure, whenever you want to, you ask a question about a topic, you start doing some web searches, and that's great. And there's some places where you can find some good information. I'm thinking about for funding, for instance, an area that I focus on a lot, the EPA's WRFIC. They've got the Water Infrastructure and Resiliency Finance Center. They've got a really good tool that has a bunch of resources on it, and you can look there too. So there's a lot of places to go, but what we're trying to do is really focus on those things that are specifically useful and helpful for MS4 program managers and those who support MS4 programs itself. And if we're missing the boat, let us know. If there's, we know that there's a different way to organize some of these topics. And I know that that's, again, there's only so much we can change things around, but if we feel like if we get a lot of feedback that says maybe we should change some of the organization, maybe we'll look at doing that. But again, we can't make those changes without getting that feedback. So again, so that's just the feedback of the experience and the information, the technical content that we've shared. We also, again, ask for you guys to provide resources. If you've got a new report that's coming out or has just come out and you want this to get out to the world, then we will happily review it. And if it meets our kind of our standards and the spirit of what we're trying to do here, we will happily integrate that into the resource overall. And maybe that's something that can help to get more visibility for the effort you put together. Again, there's so many resources out there. We wanted to find that portal that can try to make it a little bit easier for stormwater folks to do so. So again, because we'll have updates going on an ongoing basis, we ask you to keep checking in periodically. And if we get some major changes, maybe we'll do something like this again, but we'll give a some kind of event that goes over that. So with that in mind, we do have a couple questions, but before we get to that, I want to, and now that you've got some background information, I wanted to ask another question here, and it's a bit of a loaded question, but maybe it gets you start to think about things. We want to know if, now that you've got this information, is this something that you think you would use? So I've launched another poll. Hopefully it comes up here. Yeah. So the question is, do you, now that you've got some understanding of what this resource is about, we're wondering if, do you have resources that you want to share with us now, or do you anticipate in the future? Do you have any, do you want to provide input and comments? Do you expect to do so? We're just, oh, and I see that the last note, there's a typo there. It says not sure yes, it should be not sure yet. Sorry about that. So the question is, how much do we expect for of input from folks? And this is maybe a little bit of a guilt trip, but but we want to make sure that that we at least ask the question, because we've learned in life that sometimes it's just about asking the question as much as anything else. So it looks like early on there was a lot of folks who were very interested, but and now that we're seeing some folks are saying not sure yet. So I'll give another minute or two. Okay. Okay, I am gonna close this as we've got 70% of folks have voted. I think that's a pretty good amount. And I'll close that and I'll share it. And it looks like, what do we have for a final? Okay, looks like a good portion of you say you'll provide some resources and or provide some input, which is greatly appreciated. But also a little bit more of you say you're not sure yet. So I totally understand that. You're gonna have to take some time to spin around the tool and the resource and let us know. So greatly appreciate your input on that, and that just shows us that people are willing. Not many no's out there, so people are willing to roll up their sleeves a little bit. And we've already got some comments and questions that have come in that reflect that as well. So with that, I'm going to go on to our final page, and you should be able to see. We want to take some questions now. We've had some questions that have come in, and Wes and Randy and Dave, I'm going to unmute all of you guys. So just as an FYI, that's going on. Okay. And so that, because there's some questions that have come in for different folks here. But before going through that, again, you can see the link to the online resource. It's ms4resource.nationalstormwateralliance.org. You can see just the overall NAMSA website, nationalstormwateralliance.org. If you want to join the email list to get more information about NAMSA, updates, things like that, we are always looking at engagement, both for advocacy as well as just information. If you want to sign up for our email list, go to nationalstormwateralliance.org/contact and just put in your information. That'll generate an email that'll come to me, or you can just send an email directly to me, and you can see my email address there as well. So with that in mind, there are a couple of questions that have come in. And one question that came in was asking about what were the biggest challenges in developing the resource. And I'm thinking, Dave and Wes, you guys, since you were the prime movers on this, thought that would be something that you guys might want to address.
Well, this is Dave. I would just say to start that there's a lot of different topic areas that we could cover here. And we had a little bit of a challenge about deciding, do we try to go real broad and try to touch on a whole bunch of different things, or do we maybe go, or do we go a little bit deeper in specific areas that we think are kind of content-rich opportunities where maybe there are not a lot of other sources of information along those lines. And weighing those choices was challenging. I would also say simply collecting together information sources was challenging because we've got a rather decentralized community of practice here. And there's some places that have great information together, but we found that there were nuggets of great information spread all over the place, and finding them and mining them and bringing them together was also challenging.
Yeah, and Seth, this is Wes, and I would just say that the challenge for us after finding the sources was, as I said previously, really trying to figure out the level of content development on the web pages themselves. So we ended up, as you can imagine, from a science background, we're writing copious amounts, and then our excellent editors at ERG are honing that down into what are really the sound bites for information. So you'll see a lot of times that there's information presented in lists and bullets and in ways that is easy to read and understand, that might lead you to, wow, what more is there that I want to know? And I think that was the biggest challenge for us, is how to gauge and develop the right level of content where you're not scrolling for 5 minutes, but you're getting the nuggets of information rapidly and efficiently right to you.
Excellent.
And I'm still not certain that we've hit that on the head. It's a very challenging thing, and that's I think we're encouraging folks to provide feedback about it.
Exactly. Yeah, thanks. I was just going to make that point, Wes, but you made that for me, so I appreciate that. There are a couple other questions that came in that I wanted to just to hit real quickly, because they're really important points to clarify here. First, there was a question about, will there be advertising opportunities on the site? I don't anticipate that. It's not something, again, we want this to be non-commercial as much as possible. I can't, that's our vision right now. Randy, do you have any quick thoughts on that?
No, I would agree with you in what you just said, though.
Okay. Yeah, the spirit of it is that we again, try to be as non-commercial as possible. I think the way that we would hope affiliate members could support this would be to consider being part of affiliate members NAMSA. But it's not entirely, we're not entirely sure about that, but the way that we've envisioned this now is that should be generally commercial free. There's also a question about, will the content be free of charge or will it be only available to members? At this point, we want this to be available to everybody. We want this to be something that's that anyone can access, and we hope that it's, again, this is the spirit of EPA providing resources. Is not something that should benefit only NAMSA members, but it should benefit the sector writ large. We just want to be that group that helps to get this out to the world. So those two quick questions have come in. There's also a question about does NAMSA want the state organizations to push this out to local members? And I'm jumping up and down here right now saying absolutely yes to anybody and everybody. We want to get this out to the world. And I think, Randy, I don't know if you and I've talked about this quite a bit, maybe you can share some more thoughts on this, but I think one of the biggest challenges is that there's so much information out there and sometimes it just doesn't get out to the world. There's the signal and noise kind of thing, and we're hoping to try to address that problem, signal and noise, about stormwater issues specifically. But again, we want to, keep the light, take the bushel basket, off the light, that kind of thing, to get this out to the world as much as possible. Randy, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, reaching particularly the small and medium-sized cities that have phase 2 permits is always a challenge. And, we've got 300 and slightly more than 300 people that have been on this webinar. And if each of you can pick this up and distribute it, if the member organizations of NAMSA can distribute this to their the individual MS4 cities that are their members in each state, all of that would be greatly appreciated and really important.
Randy, it's Dave. If I may, I'd like to add, I would encourage the folks who do not manage MS4 programs to also take you up on that suggestion, because sharing this with the regulatory agencies, with the other people who are sort of in this stormwater community of practice that we work in, can hear about this and hopefully benefit from it. I think it'll really help build a mutual understanding of some of the challenges that local programs face and some of the tools and strategies that might be available to them, with the help of, the regulators and for the other stakeholders to take advantage of some of those opportunities. So yeah, the more the merrier.
Well, Dave, on that point, another question that came in, I think you just answered it already, is do you expect that non-MS4 local government local governments, and now I'm going to enter in also departments, to benefit from this website, and how would that happen? And again, I think that the more that because you see this so often, that stormwater ends up in departments such as transportation or roads or parks, or it's such a cross-cutting topic that those local governments or departments that are within local governments that don't focus on this specifically, I think they could benefit from this, because it could be an easier way for them to understand and get information on MS4 issues. So that's the answer I have on that question. I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add on non-MS4 local governments or departments.
Well, I would encourage spreading it broadly, because we are really trying to encourage communities to think about developing more integrated approaches to urban water management, and in many communities that maybe are thinking about this, in some cases the stormwater folks are being kind of left out of that conversation, and that's an opportunity missed if that's happening. So sharing this around the water community of practice, we hope, will help remind people about the importance of involving our stormwater managers and their programs in these discussions about how to make best use of our water resources.
Yep. Another question that came in, I wanted to clarify. There is said, are you interested in resources from state agencies or just local governments? I think we're interested in resources of all kinds, whether that, a lot of nonprofits will do research, and industry groups will do research and provide reports. WEF, WERF, NACWA, others across the spectrum. American Rivers, NRDC, TNC, others. So we're looking for resources from any source, and then again we'll go through there to see if there's if it fits the spirit of things. But that's one question that came in, and another question that's similar to that said, have we included any state example manuals, and what do you find as good examples? So, guys, have any thoughts on that? Any responses to either of those questions?
Well, I know one manual that got included in the resource is the Minnesota Stormwater Manual. I know that that's listed, but that's only because I pay attention to everything that's Minnesota based. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other state manuals that are listed as well.
There are some additional state manuals and regional manuals that were identified and included in the resources. I can't tell you exactly which ones right now, but I do know they are there.
Well, that's all the more reason for people to spend their time to dig around there. But I did want to emphasize that don't feel like you should be the one to say, well, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't send this resource along. If you have any inkling to do so, just send it along and then let us decide if it's something that meets the need. But we're looking for anything and everything as far as possible. The last question that I wanted to throw out here, there's a question about separating out green infrastructure from asset management. And I wanted to bring that up because it's a question that represents many other types of questions that will say, hey, we could organize this a million different ways. So, and again, I think that maybe that will change in the future. That's not what we're planning on doing in the near term, at least. But Wes and Dave, I don't know if you guys wanted to talk a little bit about what the organization, how we landed on that, and any closing thoughts from each one of you as well.
Well, this is Dave. This is something I care a lot about. I guess I would say asset management principles apply to every single kind of asset that community programs have to manage, from green infrastructure to gray infrastructure to your equipment, your personnel, maybe the resources you're actually trying to protect. It's a broad concept, and thinking in terms of asset management is we believe a super important investment for communities to consider making. We did put in a separate section on green infrastructure because there's certainly a lot of interest in that and room to learn more about it. I just want to emphasize, we don't really want to encourage people to think about green infrastructure as sort of this whole separate area of practice. It's a set of great tools in our overall toolbox for stormwater management. And we just felt like, from talking to people, there was still a lot of opportunity to get the word out on some of the opportunities to utilize green infrastructure methods along with others in planning what you're doing in your local programs.
Wes, any thoughts on the organization of?
No, I think Dave covered it well. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Any closing thoughts, Randy?
So in the course of putting this presentation together, I've spent more time looking through this online resource in the last week or so. And in the course of doing so, I have come away even more impressed with what's put together here and the various ways in which I think it can and should be useful for local programs. A huge expression of thanks and appreciation to EPA for recognizing the importance of this and being willing to put it together so that it can be posted on the NAMSA website. This is just good and useful material that I think will help a lot of programs in a significant way. So thank you.
Great. And Dave and Wes, any final closing thoughts or statements to make?
Oh, I think I probably said enough. Thanks, everybody. Look forward to hearing what you think about it.
Yeah, and I would just say, as I too am looking forward to getting the feedback and comments and to see it grow. I think that's really the real goal here, is to really grow its overall content and resources and applicability. So that really only happens through the feedback and folks really investing the time to look at it and provide information. So we're very, very, very excited to be part of it and to see it grow.
Excellent. And I just wanted, in my closing remarks of that, we again appreciate all the work and resources and investment made by EPA. We can't overstate that. EPA is a great partner on this effort, as well as several other efforts that NAMSA is helping to lead. We also invite anybody to go. If you're in a state that is not a member, we'd love to see if we can find member organizations or help to develop member organizations at the state level. Again, our vision is to have a member in every state so that there can be that organization that represents MS4s across the entire country. That's something that we really are trying to stress as much as possible. The last thing is that we will be having more of these types of webcasts over the next 3 to 4 months. So keep your eyes open. Again, if you want to get on our email list, please go to our website as well. And lastly, please go visit the resource and provide any and all input. So with that in mind, I know we're a little bit over. I apologize for that, but I appreciate we've still have over 225 people on board. So appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to learn more about this, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. All right, so with that, we're going to wrap up. Thanks, everybody.